To be or not to be, that is the question. When developing questionnaires, the question researchers ask need to be mindful of the answer we're looking for. So in many ways, we're like Hamlet, seeking true identity to our research. Questionnaire surveys are a method of collecting quantitative numerical data to gather information about groups' beliefs, attitudes, behaviors, and a valuable way to gain insight and information from a school community. Questionnaire surveys target the whole population through a sample. It is used either to test a hypothesis and/or answer questions. They can be collected in many different forms: mailed, emailed, interviewed in person, or interviewed over the phone. Some examples are SurveyMonkey, which is a web-based survey design, or Tell Them From Me, which is also popular as a school-designed questionnaire. There are two types of questionnaire surveys. Sample surveys collect information from smaller groups of the population. These samples need proper representation of subgroups, specific characteristics of them, and proportion of the individuals are represented. Census surveys collect information from all members of the population, and they can be accomplished if the population is small and accessible. Some threats and drawbacks in questionnaire surveys may include maturation, taking too long to perform a survey, testing, having similar questions year after year. The results can be skewed. If a sample has low participation, unreturned forms, or failing to complete one can affect a questionnaires results. To get appropriate and real answers, a research study using questionnaires needs questions that are carefully worded and language that is clear and concise. There is no opportunity for participants to ask meanings of questions while completing a questionnaire. Questionnaires are beneficial because they can focus on a variety of subgroups, for example, teachers, students, parents, and administrators. A subtype of survey methodology or strategy of inquiry is the self-administered questionnaire. When designing such a questionnaire, a researcher must provide the most important aspect to a piece of writing about academic research, the purpose statement. Creswell writes, begin the discussion by reviewing the purpose of a survey and the rationale for its selection for the proposed study. Also consider why a survey questionnaire is the method employed for collecting data. Why is it advantageous? Sometimes surveys offer an efficient, relatively quick manner of collecting information. Creswell informs that a survey offers a favorable economy of design. If done well, survey data can reflect the viewpoints of a larger population based only upon the responses from the smaller group of individuals. The characteristics of the larger population should be specified. Ensuring that a sample truly is representative of the greater whole may require stratification. For example, if the demographics of the student population included different age levels or grades, or different ethnic groups, one might expect to find a proportionate ratio of these characteristics in a sample meant to represent the whole population. In designing the methods employed in the questionnaire survey, a researcher must also consider whether the sampling design for this population is a single-stage or multi-stage. Further to that, one must also identify whether sampling will be random, in which each individual in the population has an equal probability of being selected, or if convenience sampling will be used. Further concepts to decide upon include whether the survey will be cross-sectional, representing a snapshot in time, or whether it will be longitudinal, with data collected over a longer time frame. Creswell also includes a powerful checklist of considerational items to discuss when designing a survey. Its intent is to aid in the consolidation of many of these concepts and many others not included in this presentation. As Creswell states, a variable refers to a characteristic or attribute of an individual or organization that can be measured or observed and that varies among the people or organization being studied. Whether independent, mediating, moderating, or dependent, they are all subject to the researcher's attempts to compare, relate, or describe information about the individual or organization. Researchers can collect research data with a questionnaire survey or administer an instrument in a number of ways. In his 2009 book, Survey Research Methods, Floyd Fowler suggested 5 means of collecting survey data, which included personal interviews, group administration, telephone, mail, and internet. Mail and telephone surveys are traditional distance administration methods. The printing, postal, and token prepaid financial incentive costs associated with mail surveys, as described by Dillman's 2007 tailored design method, must be considered. Fowler also suggests that telephone survey response rates may suffer from an increased use of caller ID and the rise of cell phone use. Personal interviews are essential tools, but researchers must consider the time involved. Group administration of surveys offers the advantage of higher cooperation rates. But compared to paper, Walt, Atwood, and Mann state that electronic surveying produces very similar results, and that the use of electronic questionnaires may be advantageous, especially in surveying children. Online tools such as Google Forms allow researchers to create their own surveys quickly using custom templates and post them on websites or email them to participants, eliminating postal time and costs, printing costs, and raw data entry. SurveyMonkey.com and FluidSurveys.com also offer additional advantage of some initial response analysis. The process for data analysis and interpretation should be included in the research proposal. Data is best when presented as a series of steps, and the reader can logically follow from one step to the next as suggested by Creswell. Data interpretation is a complicated process that should be transparent and requires appropriate use of the data in an ethical manner. The first piece of information which should be reported on is the sample size. The sample size should be one which is appropriate for the type of research being conducted. It may include descriptors of the selection process and the type of sampling design. Within this report, the researcher should identify who did and who did not respond to the questionnaire. As Creswell describes, response bias is the effect of non-responses on survey estimates. There are two methods for addressing response bias. Wave analysis looks at the responses and groupings by week for differences or similarities, or respondent-non-respondent analysis involves contacting non-respondents to determine if the responses differ from those who responded. A descriptive analysis of all the variables, including the mean, standard deviations, the range, and any scores for the variables should be included. Moving beyond the descriptive analysis includes the possible use of scales. Lastly, the data should be used to draw inferences from the sample about the population while providing a rationale for the use of specific statistical procedures and identifying the distribution of the scores. Lastly, the researcher would draw conclusions from the results and present them in tables or figures, reporting on how the research answered the questions or hypothesis and identifying the statistical significance of the results, looking for patterns and setting a rejection level. The final step is for the researcher to discuss the implication of the results for practice or for future research on the topic.